Welcome to Just Stories. We hope you enjoy the story. The Serbo-Turkish War, a battle for Balkan independence, by Just Stories. Chapter 1, Origins of the Conflict. Hey there, welcome to the first chapter of our book on the Serbo-Turkish War of 1876-78. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the origins of the conflict, exploring the various political, economic, and social factors that led to the outbreak of war between the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan states. First things first, let's talk a bit about the Ottoman Empire. At the time, it was a massive, multi-ethnic state that encompassed much of southeastern Europe, Western Asia, and northern Africa. However, by the 19th century, the empire was in decline, facing numerous challenges both from within and without. One of the biggest challenges facing the Ottoman Empire was the rise of nationalism among its various subject peoples. The Balkan states, in particular, were home to a variety of ethnic groups: Serbs, Bulgarians, Greeks, and others who were beginning to assert their own identities and demand greater autonomy or even independence from the Ottoman Empire. Another major challenge facing the Ottoman Empire was its struggling economy. Years of mismanagement, corruption, and conflict had left the empire heavily in debt and with a weakened economy. This made it difficult for the Ottomans to maintain their grip on the Balkans, which were an important source of revenue and manpower. Finally, there were a number of geopolitical factors at play that contributed to the outbreak of the Serbo-Turkish War. Many European powers, including Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Britain, had long-standing interests in the Balkans and were eager to exert their influence in the region. Additionally, the Ottomans and the Balkan states were jostling for position, each seeking to expand their influence and power in the region. So, with all of these factors in play, tensions began to rise between the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan states. In 1875, a rebellion broke out in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which quickly spread to other parts of the Balkans. The Ottomans responded with brutal force, using their military might to suppress the rebellion and maintain their control over the region. This, in turn, sparked outrage among the Balkan states and their supporters, who saw the Ottoman response as an affront to their own sovereignty and independence. In 1876, Serbia and Montenegro declared war on the Ottoman Empire, kicking off the Serbo-Turkish War. In conclusion, the origins of the Serbo-Turkish War were complex and multifaceted, involving a variety of political, economic, and social factors. Tensions had been building for years between the Ottomans and the Balkan states, and the outbreak of rebellion in Bosnia and Herzegovina served as the final catalyst for conflict. In the next chapter, we'll take a closer look at the military campaigns of the Serbo-Turkish War and explore the strategies and tactics used by both sides. Chapter 2, Military Campaigns. Hey there, welcome to the second chapter of our book on the Serbo-Turkish War of 1876-78. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the military campaigns of the war, exploring the key battles, strategies, and tactics used by both sides. The Serbo-Turkish War was characterized by a series of offensives and counteroffensives, as both the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan states sought to gain the upper hand. One of the earliest and most significant battles of the war was the Battle of Alexinac, which took place in December 1876. In this battle, Serbian forces launched a surprise attack on Ottoman troops stationed near the town of Alexinac, catching them off guard and inflicting heavy losses. This victory gave the Serbs an early advantage in the war and set the stage for further advances. However, the Ottomans were not easily defeated, and they quickly regrouped and launched a counteroffensive in early 1877. This offensive, led by the Ottoman commander Osman Pasha, aimed to retake territory lost to the Serbs and Montenegrins in the early days of the war. One of the most notable battles of this offensive was the Siege of Plevna, which lasted from July to December 1877. The Ottomans defended the city of Plevna, in modern-day Bulgaria, against repeated attacks by Russian and Romanian forces. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the Ottomans held out for months before finally being forced to surrender. Meanwhile, Serbian forces continued to make gains on the Western Front, capturing cities such as Pirit and Vranje in 1877. However, the Serbs faced significant logistical challenges as their supply lines were stretched thin and they struggled to maintain their forces in the field. By early 1878, both sides were growing weary of the war, and negotiations began for a peace treaty. The Treaty of San Stefano, signed in March 1878, brought an end to the war and granted significant territorial concessions to the Balkan states. Serbia and Montenegro gained independence, and Bulgaria was granted autonomy within the Ottoman Empire. In conclusion, the military campaigns of the Serbo-Turkish War were marked by a series of offensives and counteroffensives as both sides sought to gain the upper hand. While the Balkan states initially had the advantage, the Ottomans were able to regroup and mount a successful defense, ultimately leading to a negotiated peace. In the next chapter, we'll take a look at the humanitarian crisis that unfolded during the Serbo-Turkish War, including the mass displacement of civilians and the impact of the conflict on the broader region. Chapter 3: The Humanitarian Crisis. Hey there, welcome to the third chapter of our book on the Serbo-Turkish War of 1876-78. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the humanitarian crisis that unfolded during the war, exploring the mass displacement of civilians, widespread hunger and disease, and the massacre of Bulgarian Christians by Ottoman forces. The Serbo-Turkish War was not just a military conflict, but also a humanitarian crisis, with civilians suffering greatly as a result of the fighting. As the war raged on, thousands of people were forced to flee their homes, seeking safety from the violence and destruction. Many refugees were forced to travel long distances on foot, facing hunger, exposure, and disease along the way. The humanitarian crisis was particularly acute in Bulgaria, where Ottoman forces carried out a brutal campaign of repression against the local population. In the spring of 1876, Ottoman troops entered the town of Batak and massacred hundreds of Bulgarian Christians. This atrocity sparked outrage throughout Europe, with many calling for intervention to stop the violence. In response to the crisis, a number of humanitarian organizations emerged, seeking to provide aid and support to those affected by the conflict. The International Red Cross, which had been founded just a few years earlier, sent delegates to the Balkans to provide medical assistance and help evacuate civilians. Despite these efforts, the humanitarian crisis continued to deepen as the war dragged on. Disease and hunger were rampant, particularly among refugees who were living in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. Cholera, typhoid fever, and other illnesses spread quickly, taking a heavy toll on the civilian population. In the aftermath of the war, the humanitarian crisis continued to linger. Many refugees remained displaced, struggling to rebuild their lives in the wake of the conflict. The war also had a lasting impact on the political and social landscape of the Balkans, contributing to the emergence of new states and the redrawing of national borders. In conclusion, the humanitarian crisis that unfolded during the Serbo-Turkish War was a devastating consequence of the conflict, with civilians suffering greatly as a result of the violence and displacement. While humanitarian organizations worked to provide aid and support, the crisis continued to deepen, with disease and hunger taking a heavy toll on the civilian population. In the next chapter, we'll take a look at the broader implications of the Serbo-Turkish War, exploring how it paved the way for the creation of independent states in the Balkans and the impact of these developments on the region as a whole. Chapter 4: The Path to Independence. Hey there, welcome to the fourth chapter of our book on the Serbo-Turkish War of 1876-78. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the path to independence for the Balkan states, exploring how the war paved the way for the creation of independent states like Serbia, Montenegro, and Bulgaria, as well as the impact of these developments on the balance of power in the region. The Serbo-Turkish War was a turning point in the history of the Balkans, marking the beginning of the end of Ottoman dominance in the region. In the aftermath of the war, several Balkan states gained independence or autonomy, fundamentally reshaping the political landscape of the region. Serbia and Montenegro, which had fought alongside each other against the Ottoman Empire, both declared independence in 1878. This marked the first time in several centuries that these states had enjoyed sovereignty, and was a significant achievement for the nationalist movements that had been advocating for independence for decades. Bulgaria, on the other hand, was granted autonomy within the Ottoman Empire as part of the Treaty of San Stefano. This meant that Bulgaria had a degree of self-government and control over its internal affairs, but was still technically under Ottoman rule. The emergence of independent Balkan states was a major development in the region and had significant implications for the balance of power. The Ottomans, weakened by the war and facing significant challenges at home, were no longer able to exert the same level of control over the Balkans as they had in the past. Meanwhile, the newly independent states were able to establish themselves as players on the European stage, forging alliances and expanding their influence. However, the path to independence was not without its challenges. Many of the newly independent states faced significant internal divisions, as different ethnic and religious groups vied for power and influence. Additionally, the emergence of new states created new fault lines and tensions in the region, setting the stage for future conflicts and struggles for power. In conclusion, the Serbo-Turkish War was a major turning point in the history of the Balkans, paving the way for the emergence of independent states like Serbia, Montenegro, and Bulgaria. While this was a significant achievement for nationalist movements in the region, it also created new challenges and tensions, and fundamentally reshaped the balance of power in the Balkans. In the next chapter, we'll take a look at the legacy and impact of the Serbo-Turkish War, exploring how it shaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the Balkans in the years that followed. Chapter 5: Legacy and Impact. Hey there, welcome to the final chapter of our book on the Serbo-Turkish War of 1876–78. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the legacy and impact of the war, exploring how it shaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the Balkans in the years that followed. The Serbo-Turkish War was a significant event in the history of the Balkans, and its impact was felt for many years after the conflict had ended. One of the most significant legacies of the war was the emergence of independent states like Serbia, Montenegro, and Bulgaria. These states established themselves as players on the European stage and were able to expand their influence and build alliances with other powers. However, the emergence of independent states also created new challenges and tensions in the region. The Balkans remained a patchwork of different ethnic and religious groups, and the new states struggled to reconcile these differences and establish stable political systems. Additionally, the emergence of new states created new fault lines and tensions, setting the stage for future conflicts and struggles for power. Another significant legacy of the Serbo-Turkish War was the impact it had on the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans had been weakened by years of conflict and mismanagement, and the war marked the beginning of the end of their dominance in the Balkans. In the years that followed, the Ottoman Empire continued to decline, losing territory and influence as European powers exerted their influence in the region. The war also had significant economic consequences, particularly for the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans had relied heavily on the Balkans for revenue and resources, and the loss of this territory had a major impact on their economy. Meanwhile, the new Balkan states faced significant economic challenges as they sought to build their own economies and establish trade relationships with other powers. In conclusion, the Serbo-Turkish War had a significant impact on the political, social, and economic landscape of the Balkans. While the emergence of independent states was a significant achievement, it also created new challenges and tensions, and fundamentally reshaped the balance of power in the region. The legacy of the war was felt for many years afterwards, and its impact can still be seen in the Balkans today. Thank you for watching our story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you don't miss out on our next video.